Just wonderful. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We've got 9:01 and we are going to begin. Welcome to everybody and thank you so much for tuning in today and attending. Today's webinar is part of our year-long workshop that we put together and training schedule. And the objective, obviously, is to help you all do your job better. As you do your job and do it well, certainly it works nicely to improve quality of life here in our Midshore area. If you didn't get the schedule, please go to our website, mscf.org, and sign up for our emails because Tom's going to be coming back June 24th, as well as our other training schedules are there too. Let me tell you a little bit about Tom. He said, make it brief, which I will. I met Tom some years ago before COVID. We packed the auditorium up at Chesapeake College. We started to think about what our training ought to look like this year. And several of the ladies that I work with said, gee, I remember some of the stuff that Tom Ahern brought to us before, and I use it. Can we get him back? Well, we tried to get him back because we heard he's retired and we reached out to him and thankfully he said, sure, I'll do it and I'll do it with Zoom for you, which works nicely for most everybody too. So I think you'll find this very interesting and very engaging. A bit about Tom first. He's a lot of things. He's an author of several books, mainly about donor communications, which we're all interested in. November of 2016, the New York Times talked a little bit about Tom, and he said he's one of the country's most sought after creators when it comes to fundraising messages, which we all need to develop, obviously. And in May of 2021, a UK researcher who is highly revered and renowned, Richard Radcliffe, said Tom Ahern is possibly the greatest not-for-profit copyright on the planet. So, Tom, not to build you up like that, we got a drum roll coming too. But thank you so much for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Can you see it? You see the cat?
Yeah, we do. We got your slides.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now, let me see here. Whew. This is, don't worry about what you're encountering here. I just have to. All right. There you go. This is the real first slide. This is our, renowned Lisa Sargent. If you have not heard of the book Thankology, Lisa released that, I don't know, not more than a couple of years ago. It's fabulous. It's every, you know, um, trade secret that is known to fundraising copywriters. And anyway, bottom line, what you're seeing on the screen is why we do newsletters. And that's, you know, we of some kind, whether it's email or whether it's, postal, we stay in touch with our donors at least 4 times a year by print and at least monthly by email. And those aren't ideals. Those are kind of norms for an effective program. Um, so I'm going to show you the difference between public relations, PR, and fundraising. Um, we had an amazing thing happen in our industry, and it happened in around 2007. And somebody did a test, and here's what happened. Uh, this is a children's hospital, and they had been sending out to their donors a newsletter in print. I mean, it's 2007, so it is not, the internet is still kind of in the nursery. in most people's lives. Um, and so they're sending paper. They sent what you see at the top at Gillette Medical Pioneers. That was the headline, the front page headline on the newsletter. Then they decided to switch their approach, and uh, you see that at the bottom. Zawadi says, "Thank you." That is the new approach, and they've moved the focus of the newsletter away from the what the staff is doing to what the impact is there, and the donor is thanked right up front, which is very important. This is what happened though, and this is why I use this is proof, real world proof. And before, when they were sending out the newsletter to donors and it was focused on the organization, they would get in response about $5,000 per issue. Then they did Zawadi says thank you, where the donor is now the featured player in in a system, of course, um, that included doctors, nurses, patients, and so and her parents and whoever. Um, anyway, when you made it about the donor, all of a sudden, this is between one issue and the next, so you can imagine the surprise. They increased their giving in response to the newsletter by 10 times. They're now getting $50,000 per issue that they send out. That's um, one thing that happened is they went from the red going, this was a cost, not a benefit, and they went from the red to the black. So enough of that. Um, I want to point out to all you today that you're going to get a PDF that will have every slide that you're going to see. So if you're a compulsive note taker, you can continue to do that because that's the way I am too. And I like it. It's the only exercise I get some days. Um, but you don't need to take notes because you'll get the entire show as a PDF file that you can refer to in the future, which is a really good thing because by tomorrow you'll forget, according to science, about 80% of what I'm telling you today. So they analyzed at that hospital, they analyzed the two people who were in charge then and have gone on, by the way, to fame and fortune. They analyzed what they did, what made the difference, and it was these three things you see in red, that it told donors that they mattered, that it told donors they had invested their money, their hard-earned money wisely, and it also told, and this is very important, we still need you. All right, that's going to come up again. Uh, here's it. How does a newsletter fit into the rest of your, busy schedules? Um, well, if you depend on donors and then, seriously depend on donors, let's say donors make up 10%, 5% at a big institution, or 80, 90% for smaller organizations sometimes, or 50%. If that is your financial case, where you depend on, to some degree, on donor support, you have to do these three things. You ask me for my help, then you thank me if I give that help. You thank me actually even if I don't give that help. I'll explain that later, maybe. And then you report back to me what the impact of the philanthropy was, right? So I know that I something happened because I made a gift. And here it is in real life, the Pacific Salmon Foundation. This is recent. And you can see the order. That's what I want to point out here. This is a little video that's in a social post. And they start with the thank you. And that actually is half the message. Then they report back, and this is really good news to people who care about salmon, um, that this year had an unexpectedly high, they're trying to restore the spawning rivers, right? And they are. And then they close with the ask. That's the right order for something like this. You're trying to make the donor feel something. All right, so who is that donor? This is what your target audience will look like. See, you know it, I know it. Every day we are reminded that we are basically seen by the rest of the world as a set of eyeballs attached to a brain. And so we're inundated with messages just every place you look. And, I mean, gosh, even on the highway billboards, oh, the radio's playing. Look at that bumper sticker. Yeah, it's just there are messages coming at you by the thousands daily. All right. So there's one thing that you take this incoming flow of nonsense and um, you have a small pile you put aside. Those are the things you can't safely ignore where something bad happens to you. That's where your bills go. Then there's a second pile, which is everything else, stuff I can safely ignore and nothing bad happens. And that's where everything else goes, including your stuff. Out of that second gigantic pile of ignored stuff, um, I will personally, you, each individual will extract a few things to pay a little bit of it more interest in, any interest in. And that's your only hope. You want to be in that pile. Now that I've said that, this is who you're going to see in that pile. Um, the average age of the donor is 65, right? Now, you're saying to yourself, yeah, but there are younger donors. Yes, there are. But the problem with younger donors is they do not have enough disposable income yet. When you get to be 65, 55 actually is the thresholdish, um, you start to have your big bills paid off and you have a little bit more disposable income and you can afford to give some of that away, perhaps, if that's your mood, um, to a charity who asks you. And this is what the bulk of your donors in every English speaking country on earth, including Maryland, the country of Maryland, um, these are your donors. Right? All right, let's look at how you talk in newsletters because it's a little different. Um, these are the formats that you will be doing, your your work inside of. There's the print newsletter. We're going to see those and have a formula. E-newsletters, that's the easiest to do. Social media, also easy to do. And then there's finally the newsy letter, which is a version of print. And I should, yeah, add that to that slide. This is what it looks like, a newsy letter. It's just a letter. So if this seems to be a daunting task, it isn't. It's just a letter. It can be just a letter. Okay. Um, I'm showing you these books because there's a ton of research that has been done, practical, in the field research and by competent researchers about why donors respond to asks and also why they stay with you. over an extended period. Most donors do not. Um, 1% of if you're having a good day and you send out a solicitation by mail to a new audience, if you get 1% response, that's a good day. And then of those people who do respond, that 1%, only 30% will make a second gift, which is why monthly giving is so extraordinarily important because it guarantees that second gift. All right. So there is research out there. One of the things we know is that you need to establish some form of link with me, and you need to do it quickly, as you'll see. Um, this is, you've got a 3 second window. Well, no, let me put it another way. You should take advantage of the fact that the human brain will make decisions in 3 seconds or less, gut reactions. Right? And therefore, how do we take advantage of that? Well, there's one sure way to do it. The word you, and you want to put it in highly visible places. Like here's a newsletter from Presbyterian Villages, extremely successful program out in Michigan, housing for the elderly, low income, no income elderly. Mhm. Here's on the left, Soul Hope. They do work in Africa. Spectrum is youth services in northern Vermont. And I've circled each instance of the word use. So you can see how often that is used, particularly up front, like in the Spectrum example. All right. Love thy skimmers. Well, here's what we know that the human eye typically, let's say on a printed page like this, which has got 2 sheets of paper, the eye would you'd be holding it open. The eye would come in at the upper right, circle around, and leave. Each of along that route, which is fairly predictable, we know from eye motion studies, you drop things in bigger type or in more distinctive type that I may pick up in passing. So every place I put a star, those stars are for our purposes. Those stars just show you where the human eye is most likely to land. And each place that happens, you've got God bless you donors, you've got how you are helping, and thanks to the caring compassion of our supporters like you. I'm just reading what's next to those stars, and they're doing work, and that's what you one of the things you want to be you want to consider because it's a huge advantage to know this. And what you're looking at is print, but it doesn't matter whether it's print or digital. You use the medium is just an empty canvas that you're painting on. But you can see on a printed page, look at those. There are 8, 9 ways to grab my attention. Um, Now, headlines do about 80, 90, 95, I don't know, percent of the work in things like daily newspapers and any kind of news feed that you get. The headline is doing so much of the work in terms of bringing people into your content. So, what does a good headline have in a donor newsletter, which is all we're talking? That's a very, it's a special category of newsletter, donor newsletter, charity newsletter. That kind of headline, first you have a hook, but that's what all headlines have. Um, you capture the gist of the story, and again, that's what all headlines have. But number three, you applaud the donor somehow, and the typical language is something like BOY, boy, which is an acronym in fundraising that means because of you. And so you get those three elements. I'll show you what they look like. So you get the hook here, 5-year-old girl weighing 15 pounds. Then you get donor love. Your generosity gave that child a gift of life. And then you get the story gist, which is actually what this is about, the article itself, that they have plans for this stabilization center for starving children. Ooh. And they've now primed me for a gift. Here's a marine mammal place out in San Francisco. It's a hospital for wild animals. And the people who give to this absolutely adore it. They, it means something almost spiritual to people. And you can see what they're saying here. You get the story gist in this thing, small type, the important animal care. That's called a head, an eyebrow in journalism. Then you get the actual headline, which is always the biggest type. That may look like a party hat, but and then you have the the hooks. See, we know from again from eye motion studies that eye contact is irresistible. So if the animal looks at me, I look back. Here, I've got three animals looking at me. Boom, boom, boom. I am so hooked. And and then you give the donor love, patience, you heal. That's a version of BOY, because of you. Here's this you need to realize because it is extremely important. Uh, it's best to be pessimistic as a communicator because, and this is Seth Godin, the world's probably one of the world's best known English world's best known marketing gurus. And he is saying that our target market, which in charity case is donors and potential donors, that target market is, his words, lazy people in a hurry. Now, he is not judging them. He is just saying this is the reality of life today. And they don't, you make it hard, they'll go away. Furthermore, make it fast. So that's good advice, and I keep it in mind all the time. Now let's look at e-news, which is probably what most of you are doing. I'm guessing just because I see a lot of charity. I talk to a lot of charities. Mostly, they're, they look at print and go, that's not me. But they look at e-news. Yeah, I could do that. I do that all day, actually. So here are some examples. Again, you're going to get the PDF, so you'll have all these wonderful examples to choose from. That one with the cute kid is from the Anchorage, Alaska Museum. Wonderful museum if you're ever up there. Um, but what I want to point out here is goal number one, goal number two, upper left. The first thing you have to do is get the email opened. That is, that if that doesn't happen, nothing happens, right? So then you try to interest me inside. So get it opened is an interesting issue. Um, okay, what is the content of an e-newsletter? Let's build this kind of backwards. These are the things that I think are common in newsletters. I did this as an analysis for a university, and these were all I mean, this is probably you can think of another. 10, but these will probably do fine for most people. And the ones in red are the ones you really need to, kind of lean into, like the made me open subject line. Um, this is what a good e-newsletter looks like. Lollipop Farm, doesn't that sound like a place you'd like to, hang out? And it is indeed beautiful and full of just heartbreaking, lovely animals, actually, not heartbreaking, because they're all rescued there. And they share that, why I have put red arrows here is to show you where they are bringing me news that I want to read because it makes me feel good. All right. So, for fragile, community compassion save for fragile lives. And, that's, if you want to get generic, that's why donors are in your fight, is because they want to save for fragile lives, no matter what that, treat that as a symbol, a metaphor, but you've got it too, right? You got roosters rehomed, unique strays, and then they do the smart thing, which is give me a beautiful photo of a real thing to look at. And that's from Lollipop Farm. What a beautiful, ah, relaxing image from nature that is, or nature's somewhere, not where Lollipop Farm is, which is Rochester, New York. Okay. Now, what I do in order to train myself to write better subject lines is I collect the ones that I opened almost against my will because the subject line was relevant for some reason. And here are some of these examples. Ba 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 ba. You get five subject lines to look at that I actually in real life opened because those subject lines interested me for my own reasons, as it will be for everybody else. Um, One of the things reliably that will get me to pay more attention is new. That's why it's called the news, because I'm learning new information or something, but I'm also only interested in certain things. So if I'm a foodie, I may be interested in take a bite out of invasives from Baltimore National Aquarium. And because I'm going, what? There's something that we don't want in our waters that I can eat and actually taste really good. Yes, there's that. And then there's a button. And instead of saying more or info or donate or something, it's not boring language that I've seen a million times. It says get hungry, which is brilliant. Yay. Even the word news, as the Salem Athenaeum, which is a wonderful library that goes back to before the Revolution. Ha ha, take that, Maryland, up in Massachusetts. Anyway, some more, you know, one of the things your newsletter is doing for me is taking me to faraway places. Why is National Geographic so darn popular? Because it takes me, uh, you know, away from my home just while I'm sitting in an easy chair with a cup of tea. Anyway, these are e-newsletters, so not the same thing. But the tell me we are family. That's what this subject line, the new Soy Dog Post is out, sniff out the latest stories. To call the donors of to Soy Dog, which originated as a tiny animal welfare shelter in Bangkok, Thailand, run by Brit expat volunteers, and now is a vast empire of animal welfare. Um, they, sniff out the latest stories. Treat me like Uncle Bill or your favorite nephew or niece, and take me somewhere. So, welcome to you again to meet mom. That's a mother and her children, and she is a blind widow, and blah, blah, blah. And her story is horrendous with a successful, happy ending. Um, anyway. Here's, I love Connecticut, Forest Park. Um, they maintain over 800 miles of hiking trails in the state of Connecticut, and they've been doing it since Mark Twain. I mean, they go back to before the turn of the 19th century. Um, and what I want to point out here is they take advantage of one of the oldest story formulas in on Earth, the before and after story, which can be told in their case completely visually. It is a wonderful thing to point out. And then if you're trying to raise money, you show things a lot that, don't necessarily ask, although there usually should be an ask somewhere in after the jump if somebody clicks on more. But all I need the recipient of this needs to know that the after was paid for basically by charity donations. That's how donors become part of your story. Local is a superpower. That's Denise Casement, one of the most successful fundraisers on earth in the English speaking category. And she knows what works. And what works is local, makes a big difference. And so you emphasize it. And I know Nashville Rescue Mission over in Tennessee is just unbelievably fabulous. I mean, you should get on their list just to see how they do their e-newsletter. Now about Dottie. Okay, well who's Dottie? That's a good subject line. Then it's the hello. How long has that been on? Have you been signaling or did it just happen?
Just happened.
Whew. Okay.
We
All
do have a
right.
question though, Tom.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Nancy Wright is asking, is 12-point font big enough for donors?
No.
What do you suggest?
Do you remember the slide showing all the old people who look like me? Bigger. The digital world is a little tricky only because it'll look different on different screens, right? Plus, as a user, if I'm at all, sort of a little bit adept, I know that I can make my screen bigger. So I can actually, blow up type myself. therefore, it's not that big a deal. I always default to 14, or if I'm trying to emphasize something, I'll go to 16 or even 18. Um, those, I like playing around with type. I went to art school, so and I did a lot of typography over my career. So I like fooling around with it, but you may not. I would say 14 minimum, and uh, don't be afraid of 16. Okay. Shall I continue? Yabbering? Okay. No. Okay. I'm going ahead and doing it. Why do you keep doing that? All right. Going to release you from your inhibitions. The guy you see there, Jeff Brooks, that's one of his books, said this: ugly works, tacky works, corny works. Um, and why do we obey Jeff? Because he's maybe one of the top three fundraising copywriters in the English speaking world. And he's very analytical. But I mean, he writes direct mail appeals by the dozens every year. And so, and always for organizations that are testing to see which works. So that's why you can say, frankly, ugly works, tacky works. Now, the reason corny works is very interesting. Corny works because I don't have to translate it in my head. I just know what it means because it's corny. That's why it's corny, right? So it's fast. It's very corny is very efficient communications. All right, so and you can, if you have a sense of humor like Beth Bial does, this is an orphanage. It's in Tijuana, but it is funded exclusively from the United States, mostly the San Diego area. And this is they're always sending me stuff. Tom, you're one in a melon. You're the apple of our pie. There are spoil sports who would look at that and say, wow, we can't send out something like please trust me on this. If you entertain your recipients, they will reward you. Entertainment is all I crave when I'm on the internet. All right, now let's look at the formula for print newsletters, which all of you may think, if you don't have one, think are really hard to do. Not really. Well, they are somewhat, but faster. Email is faster to create rather than a donor newsletter in print. But if you want to get into that mailbox, that's mine, number 10. Um, this is the best formula. This is tested, this is used by countless organizations with successful fundraising programs because it tuned up properly. It works. Two things have red arrows, and that's because those are extra special. You include a reply envelope, but you also fold your newsletter down into an envelope, at which point everybody goes, well, that's stupid because that envelope costs money. We'll just make it a self-mailer. Okay. Common reaction. These are envelopes from local organizations that are following that formula that says you must have an envelope, the thing that is costing you more money. So you've got the marine mammal, open to see ocean size. The Cata, your Cata News is here. That's Western Mass, Great Barrington, oh, gorgeous town. Then you got Vita Hoven right above that. Hello, wonderful. Here's your newsletter. Okay, so I'm feeling good within 3 seconds. And here's what we know. This is data which is, by the way, checked constantly. And what was found was that if you had the choice of self-mailer and or putting your newsletter into an envelope, therefore with more expense, that your average gift size would jump significantly in the envelope. The revenue in the envelope was almost 3 times more than the revenue from the self-mailer. And again, this is tested all the time. So, what do these things look like? This is a what is it, July 2025. All right, Vita Hoven Foundation sounds like a big place. It's one person, one staff person. She's the executive director and does all the fundraising and takes tours from San Diego down to the, I don't know, 7 orphanages that they run down in Tijuana. Sounds like lots of fun, and those tours are quite popular. But this is their print newsletter. 4 pages, has a cover letter from Beth. There she is. There's Beth. And then we've got a reply form stuck in, and there you'll see how big and generous that reply form is. We'll go back to the common age of your donor. You don't want little type. You don't want to squeeze your type so it fits on a little piece of paper because that will not make your older donors happy. I love this because it's emerging right now. This just came in my mail a couple of days ago. And it was created Katona Village Library. The Katona, New York is not a big town, but it is on the rail line because it is, in a sense, a commuter village for New York City. Who lives there? Somebody famous. Well, I'll remember in a minute. But anyway, they got in touch. They wanted to try the domain formula for print newsletters, and they did. That's the one that says 20 toddlers seize control. That is a brilliant headline that was written by somebody who, would had a phone conversation. She did a great job. And the first one, did she didn't ask for money at all. But it got $7,000 because there was an envelope inside that came back. Now, what you see on the right, that was 2022. What you see on the right is what they just did, and it just came to my mailbox. And uh, I sent her an email. I asked, "How's it, Ellen? Let me know how it works out." And she said, it's only been a couple of days. We're getting all these people signing up for monthly giving, which is fabulous, as we know. So, this is a print newsletter for the Marine Mammal Center, which has about 25,000 people. It is a hospital of a sort, and they make 70, 90,000 in charity gifts with every issue. They do 4 a year. And same for UNHCR is the refugee arm of the United Nations, and it runs camps, it does incredible programming, just wonderful stuff for millions, tens of millions of people, unfortunately. And this is their print newsletter, and they make almost $500,000 every time they send it out. Now, their list is maybe 200,000. I forget what it was exactly, but anyway. Um, here's Jeff Brooks is back, and this is May 25 data. Again, the print newsletters are tested all the time by bigger players who love them, by the way, because they produce a lot of revenue for those people. The things that didn't work well, newsletters of 8 pages, um, plain envelopes uh, did much better than fancy, colorful envelopes. Winners, 2 pages, photo essays, and this one, newsletter in the form of a letter, which is the newsy letter that we saw earlier. Here's what we got, 8 minutes. No, we got a little more than that. We're actually almost at the end. The thing, there's one thing that donor communications are supposed to do. All right. Now, what you're looking at there is Loch Ness in Scotland. And the building on the left is called the Inch, and it is a hotel, basically, a little one. And there's a master class going on in there with Dr. Adrian Sargent, who's a marketing professor in the UK, and psychologist Jen Shang, who specializes in donor psychology. And at one point, they did a little experiment, and when all the hands were up, they'd been people were asked to read a newsletter and put their hand up when something they felt something, right? So hands would start to go up after 10, 20 seconds, 30, 40, but it didn't take all that long. All the hands were up. And at that point, Adrian, in his British accent, and the students were from all over the world, 25 of them, they he shouted, "Gotcha! I made you feel something." And what that's all you're trying to do with your communications is make me feel something. So here's this is Nashville Rescue Mission again, and this is their uh, e-newsletter, Heart of the Mission. Uh, the first thing that might make me feel something, the cross in the logo. So if I'm faith-based, if I have a Christian-based identity, bingo. Then I have eye contact. We know we've talked about this. Eye contact is important. Eyes attract eyes. So, bingo, I look at him. Then I'm given something to do, read more. Not exciting, but quite clear. And then you have your opening paragraph. Your opening paragraph is very important. Do not waste it on throat clearing or, whatever, whatever AI might crank out. When the we are family. Okay, remember that we're trying to establish that over and over and over. That's part of building your brand in my head, is that I am a valued part of this what's called synthetic family. That's what psychologists call it. And this newsletter is coming to you so you can see how your compassion, sharing love. Remember, this is a faith-based charity. Sharing love with people in need in our community. That's the good use of the we word, our community. And take me on a journey. Randy's going to tell me what it's like living on the streets because that's where he was living, etc. So anyway, here it comes down. This is all you're supposed to be doing with your communications, including all your newsletters and your appeals and whatever else you're doing, talking to people, presenting at the Rotary, whatever. The purpose of communications that are intended for for an audience of donors and prospective donors is to make them feel something. And in the red are some of the many ways you can make them feel something. So, bottom line, when you like your donors, they'll like you back. And the reason that is what you're going for, that personality, that joy in my life, is because I'll reward those charities with my continued giving. And I might even do something they want, like become a monthly donor. Um, do not forget that if you don't, newsletters have they have, they have one flaw, common flaw, which is that they talk about success to the extreme, and they forget that donors need something to do, and what they do is give to make something better. So make sure you have ways for me to do that. Here, this is your final slide. Um, Here, just print this out when you get the PDF to remind you of these easy tests. And there are two, we hope, informative newsletters that are both free. All right. My clock says we got a couple of minutes or not.
We do. And Tom, we have a question from Patty Sanner. She wanted to know, what rules do you need to follow when you are serving children in need or, say, the homeless? Stock images or actual images from site in terms of photos to draw the eye?
Yeah. Well, if and I'm not a lawyer, I have no idea. If you can get actual authentic, Nashville Rescue Mission does. All their people are real people. Um, However, I do know that from research testing um, that stock imagery is not necessarily going to reduce the response rate. People will still respond to the story. It does put the burden on your headlines to be fabulous, however. See, the thing about authentic photography is it is instantly more interesting because this is a real person on my streets. This is, that's local times 10. And stock, even the best stock, and there's really, sorry, that's my timer so I don't go over. Even the stock has improved enormously from when, let's say 10 years ago. I'll just pretend. Um, it used to be all plastic. It was like looking at mannequins in a store window. Everybody was smiling. Yeah, I've been to a lot of those staff meetings. Yeah, it's like, uh, who took the last donut? Um, anyway, stock has come a long way because all photographers, as a second source of revenue, have put their stock, their excess, their extras, their own photos on the market for you to purchase. It's so you can actually find fabulous stock photography now that doesn't look plastic. You know, that's what I know about it anyway.
We have two more questions that I can see. Emily Murphy wants to know, do you recommend sending a return envelope with every printed newsletter?
Let me give that 2 seconds of thought. Every print. Yes, that obeys the domain formula. Yeah.
Okay.
And,
Um,
and by, oh, go ahead. Give me the last question so I can cover it all.
we actually have two more.
Oh,
Sorry,
good,
another
good.
one came
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
Liz Connolly wants to know if you have any do's or don'ts when using AI with newsletters. And I'll preface this by saying we are doing a session on AI later this year.
Good. Yeah, no, that's great. No, AI is a fabulous tool. Absolutely fabulous. And it can do the job. You do have to become a master, a mistress, whatever. You have to be really good at prompts. And because the quality of your prompt is going to determine the quality of what is spewed out by AI. AI is still at some level. It's not an emotional, um, uh, machine, and that's the problem. Because emotions are really all you have going for you. Feelings, in other words. Um, Here's what I would use AI, and I do use AI. I'm a professional copywriter. It's a great tool. The It can write the story, the article, and it'll write it to a certain length. So if say, oh, we want an article on this topic, 250 words, um, and in the personality of uh, the nurse down the hall, or in the personality of the executive director. At 30 seconds later, you'll have your article, which is pretty amazing. Basically, it stole everybody's expertise. That's what it did. That's what large, whatever they're called, learning. Yeah, whatever. Uh, any other questions?
One more from Baywater Animal Rescue. What are your thoughts on QR codes for donations on print and virtual mailings?
Do it, definitely. Yeah, yeah, you don't turn down any channel like QR codes uh, because you don't like them. It isn't that. You're grateful there is yet another channel. I mean, the audience is fragmenting. Boop, boop, boop. Every time there's a new way to do stuff. And QR codes have been around a long time. They almost went out of existence. They were going extinct. And then COVID turned up, and restaurants started using them as a tool so you could read the menu without touching the menu. I mean, Lord, and that's what saved QR codes. Now people, and also you have a 2 year, 2.5 year training period where the entire world is trying to connect using their phone, and QR codes start to play a role. So yeah, definitely include QR codes. And you can do some interesting stuff, I bet. I'm not a technical expert, but I bet you can do some interesting things like lead them through the QR code directly into a video that just hooks the heck out of me and then asks me at maybe at the end to join the family.
That's great.
Yeah, see how simple this is.
Yep. I don't see any more questions in the chat. I don't know if we have one more minute left, if anybody has any questions. Um, Otherwise,
Wow.
Tom, thank you very much, Tom.
Truly my pleasure. It is so much fun to try to anticipate an audience. And here I had Maryland in my head. I've been there many times and enjoyed it every time.
Well, we look forward to welcoming you back whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. I guess I'm going now.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Thank you,
Bye,
everyone, for
everyone.
participating.
Bye. Hmm. Hmm. Mhm. Now, going. There we go.